Are we working on the live situation? Okay, thank you. You have a minute, Counselor Garcia. Michael disappeared for a moment, so we'll wait till he gets back. Thank you so much. And now Counselor Garcia has entered the room again. So at 5:03 p.m., I'm going to call the January 4th, 2023 Quality of Life Committee meeting to order. If I could please get a roll call.
Madam Chair Cassatt,
I am here.
Counselor Chavez,
Here.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Present.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Present.
and Counselor Villarreal is running late.
She's running late. She'll be, her tardiness is excused. I'm not sure how we mark that.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Moving on to our approval of the agenda. Are there any changes from staff?
No changes from staff, Madam Chair.
Any changes from the committee? And if not, can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilwoman Villarreal has entered at 5:04. Any opposed? No? Okay, that motion passes. Moving on to approval of the consent agenda. We have items, I believe, A and F removed by Councilwoman Villarreal, item D from Counselor Lee Garcia. Any other items removed from the consent agenda? No. And can I get a motion to approve as amended?
To approve as amended.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Okay, moving on to presentations. So we have a presentation by the Santa Fe Fire Department on the human cost of public safety service related to mental health and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, along with personal experiences, supportive data, resources, and treatments. Presenters will be Training Captain Michael Wagner and Captain David Brocious. There's also a YouTube video that is linked here if you have the opportunity to watch it. I highly recommend it. So thank you so much for all the members of our fire department that are here today to present. And I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Is this on? Oh, it is. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Today, I'd like to introduce Training Captain Mike Wagner and Fire Captain David Brocious, who will give the presentation today about mental health and for first responders and PTSD. Turn it over to them. It worked just before the meeting.
So we'll go ahead and show you the trailer. There's a couple minute trailer to the documentary, and then we can explain why that's pertinent to our presentation.
Department to come up to me and tell me I'm weak, because they won't. And not one person has. I'm not glad I got to where I was, but I came out of it alive for a purpose, and this is my.
Sorry, Madam Chair, we just started the full movie and I don't think we want to be here for that. We have a trailer.
No problem. And it did pop off the screen. Was that on purpose? That happens. The power has been going in and out all day, so.
I've seen a lot. Just over 34 years. I've seen a lot of things.
I think we need some tech support down here.
We
if
only
possible.
investigate major fires, fatalities or high dollar loss or.
Okay, so sorry about the technical difficulties. So this documentary is called The Call We Carry, and it's a documentary out of Tacoma Fire Department in Tacoma, Washington. Myself and Training Captain Wagner have put on presentations to the fire department personnel based upon this documentary because it's just a really digestible way for us to present the information and to break down the stigma of firefighters getting help for our mental health issues, because we see a lot in this job. So the premise of this documentary goes over a lot of things that are pertinent to what's going on in Santa Fe today. They talk about in the documentary that they're increasing call volume, which in our department, since I got in almost just about 14 years ago, we ran about 8,000 calls when I first got in. This past year, our call volume ended up just below 21,000. So that it continues to grow. And in that time span, we've only increased our apparatus in the city by 2. We added 2 new ambulances in that 14-year time period. So we're running that. So, and they're talking about violent crime is going up. That's also going up in our town. They're talking about the amount of homeless people that they have to run on, which is increasing in the call volume. So these are all things that we presented to our department. And while we were putting on the presentations to our department, we realized there was an opportunity to present this to people upstream from us, so to speak, including yourselves, to the point where you truly can make a change and make an impact on the direction of our department based upon how you vote and, money allocation and that kind of thing. So there's kind of a 2-prong approach to our training. It's to make sure our guys have the resources that they need to get the help that they need. But we saw this opportunity to present to you and say, like, maybe when you're looking at making those hard decisions, when you're voting in the general council meetings, you can take into account the human cost of being a first responder, not just dollars and cents and pure data. So I'll just give you my story. Like I said, I've been in almost 14 years. And on February 22nd, 2019, I had a call that we quote unquote the straw that broke the camel's back. It was a motor vehicle accident on St. Francis and Hickox. It was a very high profile accident because 2 people died on that call, a father and a son. The son's name was Dominic. I and a guy on my truck that day, we ran the code on Dominic, and I can still see his face. Or Dominic is the dad. I'm sorry, Jeremiah is the son. I could still see Jeremiah's face every single time I do CPR on someone. Every time we have training doing CPR, I still see that. And little did I know that a year and a half later, my wife and I had ran a charity drive for another member of our department, and in a time where I felt that I was doing one of the best things I'd ever done in my life, running this charity drive for a guy who needed a life-saving surgery. I'd gotten so low that I had a legitimate plan. And in May of 2020, I had decided that when his charity drive was done, I was going to take my own life. I had a plan. I was getting all my financial stuff ready for my wife. Luckily, I made a last ditch effort and got the help that I needed. But it was just all these little things that added up in that year and a half that I didn't know. And there's resources now that are available to us that we didn't have back then. And I'll let Training Captain Wagner share his story.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Captain Michael Wagner. I've been a member of the fire department for 13 years, 10 of which I was a paramedic on an ambulance. I was diagnosed with PTSD in 2018. Didn't realize it at the time. I didn't realize leading up to that I was dealing with symptoms of PTSD. In 2020, I reached basically rock bottom. Nearly lost my career, nearly lost my family, and had been thinking about taking my own life for probably over a year. I was able to make the steps to getting help, and I ended up going to a first responder specific PTSD treatment. It was a 35-day inpatient facility. And I was able to turn things around and get some help. But it almost cost me my life, my family, my job, and all of that. I don't want to see this happening to our members, and it's happening at a growing rate. Firefighters dying from suicide has exceeded line of duty deaths every year since 2013. Right now, we're exceeding line of duty deaths by about 35%. It's also understood from the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance that those numbers that are reported are only about 40% of firefighters that take their own lives. This is due to life insurance issues, protecting the dignity of firefighters, also firefighters in the volunteer ranks not getting included in those numbers. And these numbers are astounding, and they're growing every single year. I just want to have you guys keep us in mind when you're making decisions. We are really under-resourced. We are overwhelmed with calls, and it's really hard to recover from this and process this when we're going on call after call after call. I've had several significant calls in my career that I think attributed a lot to this, but it's really the volume of calls that we're running on and not getting that break and being in that state of fight or flight all the time. I've worked several calls on cardiac arrest calls on kids. Those are very hard for us. And I also want to be a voice for the people in our department that aren't here tonight to tell their story, because I have lots of coworkers going through what I've been through. I want to be part of helping prevent this so that we don't get to the point where we're thinking about taking our own lives or needing inpatient treatment. I'm very grateful for the resources we have right now. We have a peer support program that's basically in its inception. Both of us are members of that committee. We also have a very valuable resource through Public Safety Psychology Group that offers us free counseling for ourselves and our family. I'd like to see that resource renewed. That's a yearly contract. But I can't tell you how valuable that is to us to have an agency that's specifically serving first responders that understand what we're going through and our needs. And so again, I want to thank you for having us here tonight.
So like we had stated earlier, we noticed we saw an opportunity to show you guys exactly kind of what we go through in a very digestible way with this documentary. And that system in Tacoma is exactly how we are, a single tier system. They run the ambulance service, they run the fire service. There's so many parallels that it's a good way for people to truly see kind of what we do and what we see on a daily basis. So we're asking you, especially as the Quality of Life Committee, it's not only for our employees, but for the citizens of Santa Fe that we're continuing to grow and having more and more calls, but we're not really growing with the resources. And at some point that's going to affect quality of life for the citizens of Santa Fe and the employees of our department, because I'm the union health and safety chair. So I see the utilization of reports from PSPG, the Public Safety Psychology Group. And it's a significant amount of our department that's having to see these. And that's a good thing that we're utilizing these services, but it's also something that we've come to ask. I know that this year a flat budget is what we need, but so we need in the short term, or we kind of have short term, medium term, and long term goals for our department when it comes to mental health. The short term goal is going to be expanding our peer support group. We're currently going to send 3 people in the next few weeks, and then another 2 in June. But we would really like to send, I think we got a list of 12 to 15. We'd like to get them so that way a good number, what you said, is about 10% of our department. So right now we have 5. That's something that we need to expand upon. And then PSPG, our contract is about to be renewed with them. And based upon the owner of that company, it's going to cost more money because of our utilization. We're also starting to experiment with running extra apparatus when we have the personnel, which aren't all the time. And if we can run those more frequently with overtime, and then eventually expanding our minimum manning, so our actual employees that are employed with us, that's going to take a huge hit. And I know that Station 2 is number 1 on the agenda to be built out at South Meadows, and that'll help out with call volume, of course, but we're still really far behind when you look at our city versus cities of similar size when it comes to first responding. We're doing the job as a department. We're continually running the calls, but it's going to get to the point where we overtax our system, and we'll have to call in outside agencies such as Santa Fe County. And that's doing a disservice to our citizens. So in the medium term, we need to make sure that extra units like Med 44 and Medic 11, which are their 2 extra units, can come out, or a brush truck out of Station 7. Those units can truly help out the busiest stations, cut that call volume down, and cut the mental load. And then of course, in the long term, the grand vision is to have more stations, more apparatus, more personnel. So I just want to thank you all for your time. Appreciate you listening to us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for the bravery that it takes to be that vulnerable and to share those stories. I know that is not something that is easy for anybody to do, and especially for a population that you do have the pressure that is put on you. So I really want to thank you for being willing to come up here and speak to that.
Yes, Madam Chair, that's something that I learned through my experience, is that through the culture of the fire department as it was before, we kind of learned to bottle things up and not talk about things. And that's really where the problem is coming from. We're trying to start a culture in the fire department where we are talking about the calls we're going on. We're talking about our struggles and showing that it's okay to do that, because when you hold everything in, it's a very lonely place, and you can create a lot of space between your coworkers and you and your family. And it's very lonely, and we want to change that. And one of the things that we can do ourselves is make it okay to talk about these struggles that we're going through.
Thank you. Absolutely. And I again, being the people that are really starting this, that takes a lot of bravery. So thank you. Questions, Counselor Chavez and then Counselor Garcia.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. The fact that we have heroes stepping up and talking about this and being vulnerable is such, I think it's probably beyond what you even realize as influential. I would love to have youth see the bravery that you guys are showing us right now. And I also want to emphasize, you both described really traumatic experiences. but many of our firefighters or first responders also experience daily, hourly, probably secondhand trauma. And so on top of these very, very traumatic experiences that you're faced with, you also carry the trauma of the individuals you serve every single day. And I think that's also often goes unspoken. And a lot of people don't understand it, right? They're like, I'm here and, you know, they're going through it, not me, but the fact that you're beside them through that, you're carrying it as well. And so you're shining light on that very important piece of this whole mental health awareness movement, which I appreciate. I was curious, what happens on calls where it's highly traumatic? Is there a process that takes place where we identify the first responders at the scene of something like that and we provide immediate supports? Could you just describe that? I'm curious about that process, if it exists or.
So that's part of our contract with Public Safety Psychology Group and it's up to people like me, or it could be anyone on the call that could come back and tell their company officer, and then they go up through the chain of command to the battalion chief. The battalion chief at that point would then call, his name's Dr. Troy Rogers. He's the head of the Public Safety Psychology Group. He can call, and then Dr. Rogers then triages, he goes through and says, what was the call? And then he, in his mind, because he's a psychiatrist, and he can say, you know what, I can wait till tomorrow, or I need to come right now. So there is a process, but before it was just, that's changed in the last few years, but before it was just, you do your job, you go back to the station and you go on the next call. So that's changing. And so we have that process. So that's why another reason why PSPG is so important for us is because we have that resource that we can call. And it's up to people in leadership roles to really step back and say, you know what, there's something is not right, and we need to take a step back. And that's when we communicate with each other and then try to do the right thing.
Wonderful. And so then, I guess therapists, psychologists go to you, right? And they serve, is it like group, or is it like the person's responsibility to take advantage of that support once they're present?
Madam Chair, committee members, yes, it's very flexible. They do individual counseling for all of our employees and our families. They also do what we call critical incident stress debriefings or management. They will send a counselor up from Albuquerque. They've been very responsive in the past and have come up within 45 minutes to an hour and a half, gathered the group that were on that critical call and meet and debrief what happened and let feelings and emotions come out and get it out on the table. So they've been very responsive and it's been a great partnership with PSPG.
That's awesome. And so the contract's up for renewal now?
No, at fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you. And thank you again for your bravery. I really appreciate it. I'm just so glad that the support is there. I know there's other things, and thank you for bringing the other things to our attention of what we can do. But I just appreciate the honesty, the bravery, the vulnerability. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Michael Garcia. Michael, I apologize. That was
Madam Chair.
garbled.
And I think the video, I don't know if we want to put the video on. I see it's ready. Happy to watch before I provide comments or questions.
Sure. Volume.
Serial arsonist has come up increases in assault, robberies, and arson. Every call, there's some level of problem. It's rewarding, but it's not good work. It's the screams.
We live through that over and over again. That's continued repetitive trauma.
Firefighters, if we're good at anything, I can wear a smile when I'm at work and do my job. But I know myself.
Over 37% of first responders meet clinical diagnosis for PTSD. That's astounding.
You're not just a firefighter. You're a dad, a mom, a brother, a sister.
The sheer volume of things that you see, they're gonna have an effect. They're gonna take a toll.
Not felt like there was some sort of a stigma attached to it.
The fear of appearing weak.
You got a front row seat to human tragedy.
Self-care is not an option in this line of work. It has to be this way.
When we're outnumbered in the line of duty deaths is when we really need to start opening people's eyes and going, what are we gonna do about this?
Sorry for the technical difficulties.
Hey.
Yeah, this is fun. Okay, turn that off. Anyway, you've all been provided a link to that full feature film. I'd encourage you to view that. It was really well done out of the Tacoma Fire Department.
Well, thank you, Chief, for working through the technical challenges we had, and I think the public gets the gist of what the video is, and as mentioned earlier, highly encourage everybody because it really exposes the challenges, not only the risks you put yourself in to keep our community safe, but the risks that you take home with you after you clock out every day. So Captain Wagner, Captain Brocious, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. It is necessary because I think we are in a day and age where we need to ensure the folks keeping us safe are safe themselves. And I think that's priority number one for us, making sure captains, you and your teams are safe. And so with that being said, I know there's currently funding provided for supports, mental health supports, and it was mentioned earlier regarding additional supports like staff, so staff aren't so overworked. I don't know if either of the chiefs have the number because it was mentioned, oh, well, we've got a flat budget. Well, in my opinion, these are instances where we go above and beyond to support our community. You folks are what keep our community members safe. And if you're not safe, then you can't keep our community members safe. So I'll just say it, we throw the flat budget out the window in these instances because we need to ensure you have the tools to carry out your duties. And so I don't know if it's been discussed what additional resources would be needed, because I think that's where we begin to work with Director Ochoa as we're developing these budgets now. Because the unfortunate thing is once it gets up to us, the budget gets proposed by the executive, by the mayor's office. Once it comes to us, all we can do as a council is take what's presented, and if we need more money someplace, we've got to cut it another place. And at that point, we don't want to be getting into that. We want, if you need the resources, I'd rather have you ask now during the budgetary process and help advocate that it's there for you. Then, but us to us during budget season, we've got to cut somebody else. So how much more resources would we looking at?
That's a loaded question, and thank you very much for your consideration and your support. Yet certainly we have already been trying to put in extra units on shift when we have extra people on duty. We have a full complement of firefighters on duty, adding ambulances to the street, adding first response vehicles to the street. We're of course faced with the likely or hopefully the likely prospect of a new station, and that'll certainly take a significant number of folks to staff that. But we're always in need of more around the city. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess Chief Moya, have you begun to have these conversations with Director Ochoa? Because I know, again, getting back to the flat budget, you're working with a baseline and develop it off of it. Have you begun to ask, say, we were given this much last year, we actually need X amount more to ensure that we have the appropriate services and tools to maintain a high quality, high performing force that in turn is going to keep our community safe.
Yes, sir. Madam Chair, Commissioner Garcia, I've already worked on it, so it's in my proposals to the mayor. So I've already put them in there that we, even if it, though it's flat, I've tried to put these proposals in my service contracts, professional contracts with Chief Johnson. So we're continuing to move forward. I've done PSPG. I think we're in year 2. I put it in without asking. We were able to just fund it. And if I have to do it again, I cut somewhere else to fix this and keep this going. So I know how the budget works very well. And I understand if I have to cut operating supplies by 10,000, move it over to service contracts, I'm more than happy to. So this is not going to go away. Everything that they've been talking about, it's more stories than they know. They come into my office weekly. So I know how important it is. And also me and PD have the same contract. So we're going to try to combine them because I think sometimes we're spending more money than we need to. So PD and I both pay them 2 different contracts. So we're thinking maybe we can combine some services. So we're not overpaying and then combine, because like when they do that incident stress debriefing, we're both getting it, but who's getting the bill? So PD's getting it and fire's getting it. So we're going to be in Chief Valdez are going to look into where, if we can save a little money there and then put it towards other resources. So we have some more avenues. We're working on those issues and we're trying to come up with solutions.
Okay.
But we have us and PD have a plan with Director Ochoa to say, best case scenarios, we combine the contracts and just make them do one contract for all PD and fire.
Okay. Well, and I hate to hear you say that you've got to cut line items such as supplies, because those are necessary. What if you don't have supplies to provide the assistance, then it puts you in a much more problematic situation. And I think this is where we need to be real with the situation at hand, especially with the potential new fire station. It's only going to increase the resources needed. And we began to really have those tough conversations of increasing the budget for your team and probably PD, because it's critical. These are critical services that are needed for our employees. And because you all are seeing trauma every day. That's your job. And you guys need to have the tools to be able to properly deal with the trauma. That way, we don't have folks in situations where they're taking it home with them, where they're making life-ending decisions. That's, to me, unacceptable. We need to be providing every support possible for your team. And I would say across the board, across all city employees. But I think especially because of the roles and the critical roles you play, it's life or death. Every day that you guys clock in, it's a life or death situation. And we need to provide the resources. So I think let's continue these conversations offline, because the argument of a flat budget, that's not how you protect a community. It's not. And I think we need to make sure the numbers are correct, like I said, before it gets to us, because then once it gets to us at council, we then have to look at cutting other people's budgets, which we don't want to do. We don't want to be in that situation. So please let me know how I can help and support you with, because I from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, we need to increase your budget. It's flat is not going to work. It's not going to provide the necessary tools for folks.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, what also I'll extend is I learned a lot with the ARU. It's always people, but it's not always people. What I've learned is we need to support the whole thing. So I put a bunch of people in a division and I didn't support them on just as simple as a cell phone or computers or even office space. So I've learned that I have to reevaluate the budget in the fact that if I get station 2, hopefully keep pushing that number, it's not just the station that we need. We're going to need the people over 2.5 years to 3 years. We're going to need the equipment. And I can't do all this in a 4-year time frame without support and help and a lot of money. But that is what it's going to take is it's going to have to look at the whole picture and then stop just looking at the quick fixes. And I've learned that over 3 years as being the chief and being assistant chief before that is the quick fixes don't always work because the outcome's great, but then I have to scramble in the background to keep everything else functioning. And a lot of the times what I've been finding over the last 3 years is it's the whole fire department is affected by this and not just one division. So a lot of the times is we see ARU and ARU is so great, but I have a whole fire department I still have to function with. And these are the guys that have been around for a long time. So it's like the new shiny toy and everybody's really happy with it. But the 911 calls at 2 a.m. That is where we still have to protect these people. And these is where most of the majority of my people work are on these 34 individuals that work every day for the city of Santa Fe. So that is kind of where I'm at is I have to look at the whole picture and I have to sell it very differently than I used to because we have to know the whole picture and not just personnel or just not just a fire truck. We need the gas and the diesel and all the little things that we sometimes forget. So I've
The
learned
ripple effect.
Yes.
Yeah, so again, I'll say it again, a flat budget's just not going to work to provide the best police fire department we can. So I would strongly encourage to begin to put together those requests and happy to help push those through because I think we need to ensure that you and your team have every tool necessary to keep yourself safe, which in turn keeps our community safe. So with that, thank you, chiefs. Thank you, captains. Thank you, team who showed up tonight. As I mentioned, every day you guys step on the job. You're putting your lives at risk. So thank you. No other comments or questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Councilwoman Bitterell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for my delay and bad mood. I'm injured right now, and so I'm not feeling great physically. And so just letting you know that. Just a heartfelt thanks to the captains, Captain Wagner and Brocious. Is that the right way to say it? And I just appreciate when we talk about vulnerability, but vulnerability comes in different forms. And so I appreciate that you come from that place and sharing your lived experiences. And the recollection of that accident was really awful. Friends of mine knew the family, and so it was a hard day, and it's probably still hard for the family that's dealing with that loss. I appreciate hearing about changing a culture because I think fire departments, police departments historically have been a very different scene of culture of just not really having the space to express the trauma that you experience. And I'm glad to hear that you're saying that that's changing and that you all are more open to, sharing those vulnerabilities with each other. I think vicarious trauma, as we call it, is very real. And so I thank you for shining the light on that issue. I also think that just the fact that you're able to focus on health and behavioral health and your self-care and well-being of the department also helps you do your job. And I guess I think about the creating empathy. Having empathy starts from within. And so when you're feeling healthy and feeling like you're getting the care you need, then that's actually going to ultimately come out to the community and how you support them. Because when I think about what you're experiencing, there's also people on the community side that are experiencing the same traumas. And for you to be able to be empathetic really helps you to understand where someone's coming from if they're also having a crisis situation. So in the end, it really helps all of us as a community. So thank you for shining a light on that. I guess I'm just trying to figure out what shifts in terms of not just resources, but also like structures of how the fire department sees itself growing and shifting and innovating. And I think the chief knows where I'm going. I guess I see the alternative response unit as a solution, because then it defers certain calls that the ARU then takes. So are there other examples of things that you see of like maybe structural changes that would help you all not not just to be more efficient, but to really help you do your job and get the support you need. Are there any other changes
Madam Chair,
structurally?
Councilor Villarreal, yes, yes, we've had this multiple times. I think my biggest challenge right now and what we've learned, we currently have an academy going on, is we're having the same problems that PD's having. We're having the problem with even recruiting people. 20 years ago, I was here, 300 employees, 300 people applied for 20 positions. We had 50. We're down to 10. We started with 15 last week. By the time yesterday happened to today, we're down to 10 employees that are in the second day or third day of the academy. So what my main focus when I became chief was we have to start from the base and we have to build from the base, because I can put enough people in the seats, but my problem is I can't get them in training fast enough. So what we've started to do was laterals. It took us a long time to accept them. That's another cultural change we've changed, is these guys will tell you right now that laterals are a great thing. They come out better prepared. These guys don't have to train them much. Captain Brocious doesn't have to babysit, say the word babysit, these young employees that don't have these abilities to handle these calls. So that is one thing we're really trying to change. The biggest thing is paramedics. If I put more ARU units on and I keep paramedics on there, I'm taking away from our 911 paramedic units, our EMS license. So the key is I have to build from the base. I have to fix my paramedic shortage. I have to fix, and that includes not only trying to give them more money, but also trying to lower the call volume. When they're running 16, 17 calls in 48-hour shifts, that's a lot of time that they're taking away from other things. And it's not just a 5-minute call, it's an hour call, because once we get to the call, they'll assist the engine and then we'll assist. The engine will go back in service to run another call. And then that ambulance is going to either Press or St. Vincent's Hospital. So I'm working there. I'm trying to get there, and the air units are helping, but they're not transporting enough. So then when they need help, then they're calling an ambulance that's being taken and then they have to transport. So we're working in the right direction. It's just, we have learned that we have to still continuing to crawl. And the way all of us know how city government works, I'm a fixer and I can't fix this in 2 to 3 years. It's a long-term solution. And if we get Station 2 off the ground, that changes everything, because then we're going to be going 100 miles an hour. I need 50 more people in my FTE, because not only are I can't run it with my current FTE, and that's 205. I have to go up to 250. So we would have to increase our staffing level. So a lot of it is just crawling. The AR unit is helping. We don't have a metrics to see how much it's helping, because they're taking calls away from PD screen or fire screen before we have the ability to know. So maybe an hour later it would get to a fire department, but we don't know that effect yet, and we're working on it. So it's a revolving door, a moving target. We're putting a brush truck online when we can at Station 7 to help with Engine 7's call volume. So that's something we're trying to do, so the engine can not run 32 calls in a 48-hour shift because it's chasing 2 ambulances. We're trying to put Med 44 on more often. A lot of times on C shift, we have extra medics on that day. So we're able to not run 7 ambulances a day, but we're moving our call volume up to 8 ambulances a day. And that helps the overall call volume. Another thing that I'm trying to accomplish is telling people we don't need 4-man pumpers. We don't need 4-man units. We're putting minimal staff, everything, and put extra units on the street. That's what we need at this time. So those are kind of where we're at. I wanted to move a lot faster, but like this fire academy, it takes us a long time to hire people. It takes us 6 months just to go through from the time I hit advertisement to the time we start the academy. And then we have 6 months of the academy. So it's just, the process is just so hard. And then I had a firefighter resign today, and it wasn't due to anything more than he wanted to move to another state and start over. So I asked him, is it something I did wrong? Is it something Santa Fe is doing wrong that you don't want to stay here? A lot of the competitiveness, I will be completely honest, is we're behind the ball in competitiveness. AFR this week offered $15,000 for paramedics to go jump over there. So that is something I need to start looking at, like what we did with PD in the last budget. I need to start looking at, are we going to do hiring bonuses? Are we going to do stuff like that? Retention bonuses, stuff to keep our people here. So we train them and do this great work. And then, that for somebody that's struggling financially and they see a $15,000 sign-on bonus with AFR, a lot of people will jump ship. Bernalillo County offered $8,000. So I think I'm not used to this, The fire department's not used to having to go out like PD is, so I'm having to learn and change the culture of we're not the golden child, I guess I'll call us for now. Like PD's catching up and more people want to do, PD's catching up us with FTEs and stuff like that. So I have to learn how to change the culture in the fact of recruiting better and taking care of our employees and making sure that they are wanting to be here. That includes benefits, health insurance benefits. I met with my media person today to say how we can brand us better, how to make us look better, and how to make us want to stay. And that's not only branding for the outside, but it's branding for these guys here. I think that's something I need to change. We need to change as a fire department, is making sure we want to keep our employees and that we are the best department in the state. So they don't want to go anywhere else. So I think that's something else we want to try to accomplish too.
Thank you for those details. I think it's helpful to hear about that. And we essentially, since I've been on council, have supported every single pay increase and incentive bonuses when we have the funds. So hopefully we can figure that out for this next budget cycle. And I'm always laughing because we're like somehow money gets found. So I'll just say that money gets found and we need to find it to be able to be effective and be able to support you all. And then also, how I also feel about diversity and making sure our department's diverse and having the different perspectives, having more women. There is data showing that there is a different perspective when there is female a female perspective in a department, and having that balance. Some things change. It doesn't necessarily help everybody's needs for behavioral health support because it's a culture shift and that doesn't happen quickly. So I appreciate that you all are wanting to go in that direction and that you're wanting to see that shift and you're recognizing it. And I appreciate your time tonight and being with us. Thank you,
Chair,
Madam
I had
Chair.
one more thing to Councilor Villarreal. So I just want to include that it's not just about money, and these guys will say the thing, like we can throw money at stuff all the time, but it's also about everything. So it's about lowering call volume and it's lowering that. So I don't want you to think that I'm up here just saying we need to pay these guys 100,000 a year. It's more of, and they'll agree with me, it's more of, the whole culture changing. We get more units on the street. They're happier. They're not running as many calls. They're more rested and stuff like that. So that is something else I just wanted to share.
And it's also deeper than that. It's like housing security and having people housed and feeling safe and getting the support they need in our community. And that actually affects your job too. So there's a lot of work to be done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman. Councilor Lee Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really want to thank you guys for sharing your stories with us because, as my colleagues here have said, it's important. And when you look at people in your other people in your positions, your brothers and sisters, firefighters, your brothers and sisters in public safety, you look at them big and tough. You've got this shell and you guys run to the danger, to the fire in the building. And a lot of times people they see that as, oh, that's a tough person, they can handle it, right? But I do want to thank you guys for sharing your stories with us, because I think that's important that we know and the community know that these are real things. And I couldn't sympathize with you because I've never been in that situation where you go to a call and people die and they're young, they're old. Death is non-discriminatory. I guess one of the things that I have a question of is going back to that and the vetting process of maybe even in the recruiting process or the training process. And Chief Moya, you said it's very cumbersome from almost a full year. Is there anything during that training process where, other than showing them a film, so this is things that you're gonna be up against, and you don't want to scare somebody off, but you really want to know that they have the highest potential of being able to deal with these type of issues? Is that part of your training, the training process?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, yes, we've recognized that. We do realize that, 80% of what we do is EMS. And 20% is fire, rescue, that sort of thing. So we've realized that we need to paint the picture of what this job really is. We need to paint the picture that you are a healthcare provider on the street. So prepared to care for people and be empathetic. And we need to search out those folks that are empathetic and want to help and want to care for people. And not only that, but then be prepared, obviously, for the physically arduous task of tearing into a house when it's on fire and tearing and pulling a car apart to rescue somebody out of that. So it's a special breed of folks that we need to find that are talented in that whole spectrum of caring and work.
Thank you. And I guess just to be a little more specific, is that is it something, a part of the training that where before they are to graduate, before they are to get that badge, are they put through maybe a situation where you can test how well they'll be able to deal with a tragedy, a vehicle accident where there is a 5-year-old that and things of that nature? I mean, and again, you don't want to get to the 11th hour and then scare somebody off, but you don't know where how they will react to a situation like that until they're
Sure.
really in it. And I think that's one of the hardest things to train for, and to have somebody to have that expectation once they're in the job and in the role.
Sure, Madam Chair and Councilor Garcia. So to address that specifically, that starts in recruiting, and that's one part of the whole recruiting scheme. We need physically fit folks. We need people that can comprehend reading and writing, but we also need mentally stable folks to begin with. They're put through a psychological screening before they're even hired. So looking for a well-rounded, solid kind of personality and person. Beyond that, when they're in the academy, we started this just this last previous academy that we had, putting them through a critical incident class, a 5-day class that's led by the PSBG group that we've contracted with, that put them through real life scenarios of challenges of behavioral health, mental health, and how to deal with that in real time situations. So we're trying different ideas. We're looking for different ideas as well.
Right. And I know that if there's no glass ball that you can look into and know how a person is going to react to a real life situation like that. And so I appreciate that.
Madam Chair and Councilor Garcia, I just wanted to add a little bit to that. We train our cadets in very high stress situations. Every single day is high stress situation. That way we can ensure that they are able to perform under the pressure and the stress. It's hard to train somebody for pulling a dead 5-year-old out of a vehicle. We can train people to know what to do in that situation and to be able to handle that pressure. You talk about the hard shell that we all show on the outside. Part of that comes from our training. And that's also what's hurting us on the back end with PTSD, because we don't show that. I know I was going home to my family and telling my wife, I had a good day. That's all I would talk about. So we can get them there, but the things that we're seeing, the traumas that we're seeing, human brains are not supposed to process that on their own. It's not normal for any human being. It's hard to get somebody coming in and knowing that they're going to be prepared to not be affected by that situation. We have to put on that face, that game face, when we're out in the public and we're dealing with these things, because we still need to work together as a crew. We still need to, people don't want us showing up to work on their family member and having us, bug-eyed and freaking out. So that's something that we learn through our training and through constant exposure to these. A lot of times we go on calls that are very bad calls, but it's not the first time we've been on that call, so it's maybe a little bit less alarming, but that doesn't mean the damage isn't still being done.
Thank you. I know that the police departments many times have a chaplain. Is there a chaplain within the fire department, or is that shared?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, we pseudo have a chaplain. I guess we on big incidents, we share a chaplain with PD. He's kind of a all over the state kind of a chaplain that serves and yes, you know him. We also have a retired engineer from our department who's found another career in service, in religious service, and he helps us with ceremonies, but I'd love to employ him further. It's just a matter of trying to see if he's willing to commit or able to commit, I guess. But that is something that the film focuses on as well. And they have that resource in Tacoma. I think it's something that we should explore further.
Thank you. And I just bring that up because I think that having a good, strong peer network, whether it's a chaplain, whether it's a buddy system, whether it's, and the PSPG psychology group and working on how we strengthen this idea that you've got somebody to talk to. Because we don't want to get to that point where we missed the boat and now you're at that point in that stage where you're planning something out, and man, that's, again, I heartfelt thanks for sharing that with us, because a lot of times we don't hear that from people. And I think that's where you strengthen the group, strengthen the process, and a daily debriefing, a weekly debriefing, what's going on. And that's where the psychologists and people having a buddy system where you can talk to and say, hey, you know what, man, this is going on. And really being able to trust in that person. I think that's the biggest thing, is you got to have that trust. Thank you for sharing. Again, I'm here to support, just as my colleagues are, with anything for your department and public safety and all. And once again, thank you guys for what you do.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you all. I do have a couple follow-up questions. Captain Brocious, I believe you were the one that mentioned sending people somewhere, but I don't think you told us where they were being sent in terms of, I assume it's like a peer training. Can you provide a bit more information on what that is?
Yes, Madam Chair. I was talking about the peer support team. So currently we have 5 people that have gone through the certification process. And I just spoke to our health and safety officer this morning, and we have the budget for 5 more. We're sending 3 here in the next few weeks and 2 in June.
Okay. And is that an online certification process, or do they physically go to a in-person training?
It's a 3-day class in Albuquerque.
Okay, wonderful. Great. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. My colleagues have really, discussed a lot of really looking at what some of the different supports are. I imagine that because this is something that is being experienced nationwide, that a lot of fire departments are grappling with this issue, and we saw in documentary, and I would imagine there are some best practices. Is there a maybe consortium of fire departments nationwide that are taking up this issue, and that there are these discussions of what best practices are in other communities that we can be looking at?
So not currently in this area as far as fire departments go. They're a little more progressive when it comes to this in the Northwest. There's an alliance called Code 4 Northwest, which is kind of a network of first responding agencies that, they've been getting out the word a lot sooner than we have here in New Mexico. And they are bringing in these resources to their fire departments to speak, to bring awareness to what's out there. The international IAFF Firefighters Union has a center in Baltimore called the Center for Excellence, and they are specifically treating firefighters with PTSD. There's also several other treatment facilities across the country. I went to one in Utah called Deer Hollow, and they focus strictly on first responders. And I think that that's a great resource, but we just need to make those resources available to our people. And I can say from going through that process, it was very stressful when it was dealing with the insurance company and the logistics of getting there and the amount of money that I had to pay out of pocket to do that. But that was a facility that is being used heavily in the Northwest. When I was there with 12 other firefighters and police officers, and they were all from Oregon, Washington, and Idaho.
Okay, so it does sound like some models that we could potentially, as you continue to explore this, and networks to tap into, and maybe some things that looking at regionally that might even be helpful as we partner with other elected officials and as you guys partner with other fire departments. Looks like there's some things that we can continue to explore over the next few years.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Chief Moy, I believe this would be a question for you. The smile going on. You're very excited for the question. So, we've discussed a lot that part of this is volume of calls of the challenges of really trying to take that on and not really having this debrief time. We recently did the police workforce study that was taking a look at, what would that ideal number look like? And of course, it'd be different for fire, because if we're really talking about building in time between calls and that opportunity for potentially some assistance between calls, just time to debrief, time to de-stress, time to let that nervous system drop down again. Have you explored potentially starting to look at, what would this really look like if we were to, we have our ideal police number. We're not there, but we know what it is. Have you started to look at this as well? And especially considering, some of the conversations with the new fire station, areas that we should be covering, areas maybe we shouldn't be covering?
Madam Chair, so our study should be done by the end of the month, I'm hoping. So we contracted out 2 months ago with Fitch and Associates. So we're waiting to see what that study looks like, and then that will help us push all this information back to you guys. So we'll have a presentation at governing body, a lot with me, a lot with Fitch and Associates to get an understanding of where we need to go.
Wonderful.
We've brought up Station 2, so that will be taken into consideration. So once police was done, me and Director Ochoa worked on it. So we are hopefully done by the end of the month. They've been with us for 3 months now doing data stuff. They came down about a month ago and did internal interviews with all of my command staff. So we are trying to get some solution to present to you guys, so we have some more data and some more stuff to back up what I'm trying to push forward.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm glad that that'll be coming forward. I look forward to seeing that. And again, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for being here. Thank you for really bringing up this challenging topic. Thank you for your service to our community and for the work that you all do, and to your colleagues. I'll give you one quick question. We got a lot of work ahead of us, so go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just forgot to ask this. So where is our largest volume of calls? I'm assuming south, but I don't know. I mean, where is our largest volume of calls? And you did mention Fire Station 2, I believe that is South Meadow.
Yes. So Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, what we're trying to accomplish is if I can get Station 2 up and running, and this is what I presented at our breakfast, is I need to push all our districts down. So our heaviest call right now, slow call 20 years ago, was Station 7. Now it is our busiest station. It is all the growth that we've encumbered on the south side, by going to the community college, by Presbyterian. We keep adding all this growth, but we haven't added anything in 22 years station wise. We've added the 2 ambulances like Captain Brocious have said, but that's it. So the goal is, if we can get Station 2, I'll push all the districts down. we'll start bringing up the call volume. So we can spread the call volume out. So by us putting it on there, if we don't get it, I have a backup plan. We're going to start putting more units in the stations we currently have to keep up with the call volume. And that's what we're going to have to do. We don't have a choice. So with Station 2 or not with Station 2 over the next years, that is my goal. We have to build my department up, put more people in the streets, more units on the streets to help facilitate it. So the station's the ideal scenario. But if it's not the ideal scenario, we need to push more units into the stations we currently operate. That's our only option right now, and to keep those going and not annexation that area until I get that station put into place, because I can't currently do it with the staffing levels we currently operate now.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. So appreciate the answer.
Thanks, Counselor. All right, thank you so much. Really appreciate you all being here tonight. Look forward to seeing you again and hearing more proposals as they come forward. So thank you. All right. Got a lot ahead of us tonight, y'all. So let's keep rolling. Moving on to our consent. Item A, approval of the minutes for the December 2022 Quality of Life Committee meeting. Councilwoman Villarreal, you had an amendment to these.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick correction on page 10. The sentence, if this opens up here. We didn't, hold on, my Prime Gov's taking a while. On page 10, when we postponed, it didn't say what the action was. So I was just going to add some language. Hold on. The sentence wasn't complete is what I was going to say. And my Prime Gov's still thinking.
It says, right now it says that Counselor Michael Garcia moved, second by Counselor Lee Garcia, to postpone the resolution until, and it should say the January 4th Quality of Life Committee meeting order. Ms. Martin? Jeff Norris?
Great.
System there. Somebody.
Okay. Thanks for letting me know.
Thank you.
Okay. Sounds good. Yep. Sounds good.
In addition to that change on page 11, when we are discussing the electric bicycles, it currently says that the motion was that it was moved by Counselor Michael Garcia and seconded by Counselor Renee Villarreal to postpone the bill until January 4th. We did in fact pass that bill as amended at the previous Quality of Life Committee meeting. So that needs to be updated as well.
So that was actually a switch. I think that language was supposed to be the motion above. Yeah.
Yeah. It does say that this one was postponed. It just doesn't say which, and then it doesn't, this one should have been approved. So we need to make sure that both of those are updated as to best of our ability.
And I move to approve as amended.
Second.
And can I please get a roll call?
Okay, Counselor Amanda Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Renee Villarreal.
Yes.
Chair Cassett,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you so much. Moving on to item D, this is a request for approval of the Recovery Fund subrecipient project participation agreement in the total amount of $2 million of American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funds to underwrite the acquisition of the Lamplighter Inn. This agreement falls under the first statutory category to respond to the COVID-19 public health emergency or its negative economic impacts. Bella Luz Apartments 2022 LLP. We have Cody Minnick. It's Minnick, right? Got it right finally. As well as it looks like Alexandra Ladd is here as well. Counselor Lee Garcia, you pulled this item. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I'm just, I pulled this item mostly because I want to hear a little bit more about where we are in this process. What kind of target dates we have. I mean, run me through where we're at, where we look to be in the near future once we get this funding going and how it's gonna help our unhoused community. I mean, I'm intrigued to see how this is gonna help. And again, how we're gonna run it to make a big difference in our community.
Sure. Well, in Quorum, the foundation gave us a bridge loan to acquire the property. So this 2 million of the ARPA money that you're approving right now is going to pretty much pay them back. Right now in the process, they just are undergoing asbestos remediation. So there's actual rehab of the property going. I believe that they're hoping to have it done by the end of spring, but it's probably not likely. There's still some zoning issues, the open space factor and parking that has to be handled. How it's going to help is that it's going to be converted into 58 units of affordable housing. All of the units are going to be offered to people making 80% average median income or less, with 25% of the units dedicated to special needs populations, so formerly unhoused peoples. And Bella Luz LLP is partnering with the Lifelink, who will have some case managers dedicated to those units.
So thank you for that. Being that our target population are those that are gonna need assistance, how does that tie into our services provided to them to help them get on their way through a stable housing situation or out of this? Is this kind of like what we are using the Consuelos Place for in a sense?
It's a little different. Consuelos Place is a non-congregate shelter, so that is more of a stepping stone situation that you're speaking of. This is actual permanent housing, so these people won't leave until they move on to another thing. They won't be, it's not really like a transitionary thing.
Okay.
There's 25% the units set aside. I'm pretty sure they're not going to be ushered out of there when something opens up, but these units are going to be offered at such a low enough rate where they can be using these federal housing choice vouchers, which is another huge issue in Santa Fe, where there's not enough units that can accept these vouchers.
What is our target kind of to get this thing going? You said the spring, maybe year from
I
now?
can't speak to that. Maybe Director Ladd can, but it is a moving target. It's I can say that rehab is underway. Finally, there's just a lot of red tape to get through.
Sure. And Madam Chair, Counselor Garcia, I also wanted to clarify, the city has no ownership stake in this property. So the owner of the property is Bella Luz LLP, which is an affiliate of JL Gray Company, which is a New Mexico-based property management rental housing developer. And they're looking to expand their business model. They want to start specializing in these highly supported units because there's such a big need and there's so little capacity in our state to provide that kind of service. And also, just to emphasize what Cody said, this is the entire project isn't dedicated to those highly supported units. The entire project is rent restricted and for income qualified renters, but it's 25% of the units that will have the highly supported services attached to them. Some of those folks may stay in those units for a really long time. Some may get stabilized, may start making lots of improvements in their lives and be able to move into another unit that isn't as supported. And some, may move on to a different kind of housing subsidy or even permanent independent housing. And I think in terms of the timeline, these projects always take longer than you think they're going to. Lots of work has been going on behind the scenes that hasn't been as obvious. The land use entitlements are still in process. The asbestos removal has started. There's been design work done. So there's lots of work being done, even though it seems really slow.
Per unit, how many people are comfortably going to be able to be housed in these units? I mean, they're hotel rooms, right?
Madam Chair, Counselor Garcia, this one of the reasons why this property was so appealing is that it has a separate building that has 21 bedroom units. Right now, I think the room count's 78. Is that right? 72. So some of those rooms will be combined to create multi-room apartments, and some will remain in a studio apartment configuration.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I had. I appreciate you guys being here to give us a little bit of an update on where we're at with it. Anybody else?
Thank you, Counselor. Any other? Councilwoman Vidal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I asked extensive questions about this in finance, so I won't reiterate them. If folks that are in the audience are interested about some of the questions, you can watch the finance committee meeting. But one thing I did want to just clarify while I have you here is that role of Ancorum, since they're going to be reimbursed for their bridge funding. Can you say again what you think their next role potentially could be, or hoping they'll be? Because they're not leaving. They're going to still be part of this project. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, the Ancorum Foundation, and I said this last night, they're a healthcare foundation, but they expanded their scope to include housing because they're realizing, and all the research everywhere shows, that safe housing is a health issue. And so in this position, they have in the past, they've continued to provide funding for social services. So it's very likely that they will create some support for the services provided on site. Once they recoup their investment, I think they're looking to possibly do this again with another property where they provide the initial financing to get the purchase closed. And then once other funds can be secured, they get paid back. And why this is important is because with these rent restricted properties, I think there's this sort of misunderstanding that if it's affordable housing, it's just affordable to live in. But these properties have to function. They have to earn revenue. They have to pay for themselves. They're business models. It's just that they take in a lot less revenue than other business models. So what's really important about this particular property is that it won't have any debt, so that it can earn some money from some of the restricted rents, and it can be self-sufficient because it can pay for its own operating costs. But the social services support, that probably will have to come from another source.
Right. Thank you so much.
Any other questions, comments from members of the committee? And if not, what are the wishes of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion a second. Can I please get a roll call?
Counselor Amanda Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Renee Villarreal,
Yes.
Chair Cassett,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you so much. Moving on to item F. This is consideration of a resolution sponsored by Mayor Weber, myself, and Counselor Chavez. It's a resolution adopting the Midtown Community Development Plan for the Midtown Redevelopment Project. We have Lee Logston, Midtown Asset Development Manager, here to present, as well as Director Rich Brown. Do we have anybody on Zoom today?
Madam Chair, we have Daniel Hernandez, and we have also Director Ladd, who worked on the project. So she's a subject matter expert.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Councilwoman Vidal, you pulled this item. Floor is yours.
I did. Just kidding. No one else pulled this item? Okay, that's what I thought. Actually, I just wanted to reiterate. Let me back up. The reason why I was late, we had a Community Development Commission meeting, and there was robust conversation about the plan. I think there was some different opinions about what they thought about it. I think overall they appreciated it. There's a lot of information. They appreciated staff and all the work that they put in, and definitely aspects of the plan that they were supportive of. I think the few comments that I did want to share that came from members, and I'll just read off on some of them, because ultimately they did approve. Their recommending body, they recommended approval with a few things that they want for us to consider or look at. But I did want to just state some of the things that they mentioned from various members. One said that the housing for all didn't necessarily fit what they thought was the need. It shouldn't be housing for all, that really we don't need any more higher end housing, and that we really need to focus on mid and low income levels of housing needs. There is, and then there was clarification by staff that when we're talking about housing for all, it's also including people of low income, and that was really the spectrum that they were looking at. I think there were some folks, they felt like there were, well, there was one particular person thought that we're taking a traditional approach, and this is not, it's a conservative plan, and that we need to be doing more. And then there was another member that disagreed with that notion and thought that it was creative and innovative, and that there were aspects being included that we have never been considered before or even talked about. So as you can see, there was a lot of opinions about it. And I just wanted to let you know that I think overall, just structurally, we wanted to understand how to operationalize some of the things that were in the plan. And so this is a guiding document, and then how you operationalize it is another piece of it. And so those RFPs and those other pieces of how the process will work wasn't completely clear for some folks. And so I think we'll just have to tighten that section up, I think, about, how we're going to look at, what are those called? I'm sorry, Alex, I'm forgetting those sections that we just need to just define better.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, are you talking about the section in the front that defines the guiding themes and the intent, and then we would have include in that section a definition of some of the tools, because we talk about now I'm forgetting.
There are implementation tools. Sorry, I was waiting for my PrimeGov again to come back to where it needs to be. So those implementation tools, we talk about them as actual potential uses, like the solicitations, the direct negotiations, disposition, but we don't define it anywhere like what those could include or potentially entail. So I think we just have to somehow either do an appendix or just be able to clear that up, because I think that was a conversation in finance that wasn't clear. Just kind of synthesize what the plan means, and then what are the tools and how we actually implement them. I think overall, the clarifying language is what they want. So the Community Development Commission recommended moving forward, but continue to have clarification on definitions and processes. Continue, and then also the policy development around that. I think we talk about that, but I told them that it also depends on counselors too, to take on certain aspects of this plan and then create or have resolutions that may, expound upon something that was in the plan. The other piece is like continued participation, community participation with community groups, so that there's still feedback about how to move forward with certain aspects. Personally, I'll just say that I appreciated some of the things that I was concerned about. And again, how do we operationalize it is still I still want to understand that better. But the, sections of the equity piece for affordable housing, I think there's ways that are, to me, that are important. The fact that we are extending the period of affordability to not less than 30 years. We've never had that in place before. And the fact that we even talked about land. Sorry, it's just like, my notes are really not coming up here. Land trusts, community land trusts is an important, realization that that's a tool that we have There are things that, in the housing vouchers piece, prohibiting property owners and property management entities from discrimination. So I think all of these pieces are really important, and I'm glad I saw that they've made their way into the plan. I have some things later on that I think just corrections, as I usually do. There's some typos, there's some formatting stuff, and I don't want to really get into that tonight, but I'm hoping that there'll be a chance to talk with staff so that I can point out some of the things that I was able to find that we will probably need to modify before this is finalized. And I'll yield the floor right now. I'm just going to look at my notes since I just wanted to make sure that you all heard from, or that I reiterated what the Community Development Commission members were saying. I think overall there was a lot of positivity, but also wanting to see more. And I'll stop there and
Thank you.
move on.
Counselor Michael Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, team, for being here tonight. I appreciate the report and been really diving into it over the last couple of weeks. And I think it was mentioned by my colleague last night during the Finance Committee meeting that it's very aspirational, and I agree. I think it's aspirational, and that's what we should be doing, is we should be aspiring for the best use of that space possible. I did have one question. It's because I was trying to find it. Quickly find it. It was regarding an MRA and including an MRA for the Hopewell Man neighborhood. And I asked the question because as we look to develop this space and we look for neighborhood stabilization practices and protections, that neighborhood is going to be the highest and most likely to be impacted by the development of Midtown. And I want to do everything to ensure that my constituents aren't displaced. We have folks that have lived their generations, so I guess the question is, when we were talking about an MRA in the past, there was the kind of pivot that we weren't going to include any neighborhoods because of the whole blight issue. But in the report, it's indicating that we would, and I'm trying to find the page, I apologize, but it's page 18. It's talks about designating a metropolitan redevelopment area for the Hopewell Men neighborhood. And so kind of is counter to what we had discussed in the past. And so my question is, why are we including this in the plan now when we had made the decision not to include any neighborhoods should we move forward with an MRA for the Midtown site?
Councilor Garcia and members of the committee, we have spoken with Chainbreaker extensively through this process. We've had many good partners through this process, but they've perhaps been one of the closest in continuing to work with us moving forward. We've done a few sessions at Chainbreaker. I've seen you at them, you've seen me. What's come out of that discussion is that the residents in the Hopewell Man neighborhood are not necessarily opposed to being in a area determined blight because they see the potential benefits of an MRA or other mechanisms for their neighborhoods. So we put that in there because, that is the word we're getting from those residents through Chainbreaker, is that they're not necessarily afraid of it. A lot of neighborhoods are afraid to be called blight, but they're not, because they see the potential benefit. And just want to also add that I don't know if we can really say that, whether or not they'd be included was decided or not. Ultimately, the council will make the decision on an MRA boundary. But yeah, internal discussions had generally, you're correct, tended to leave out any of the residential neighborhoods before.
Thanks for that clarification. Just because like I said, the last time we discussed it, we kind of pivoted away from neighborhoods, and this includes it, but I'm glad to hear that there's been the discussions with stakeholders such as Chainbreaker, who have extensively organized, in particular, the Hopewell Man neighborhood and the Triangle District, et cetera. And we want to ensure that should we move forward with that type of designation, the stakeholders are well aware and supportive of it. So thank you, Mr. Loxton. I really appreciate that. I guess other than that, I like the report. Again, I like how aspirational it is. The one challenge I have with it is, and it was brought up last night, is regarding the FIR. Because when you get into the details, the public deserves to understand what bill they're going to be footing for this whole process. And I was a little surprised at the conversation last night regarding how we've left it so open-ended, but, and I think it was my colleague to my right, Councilwoman Villarreal, had said there's costs that we know that are coming that we could easily identify. And I think that's where we need to be able to put that in the FIR to have folks understand these are costs going to incur, because having the ballpark of 53 million, Mr. and Mrs. Joe taxpayer is going to say, what is that being spent on? Where are those resources going? $53 million is not a small amount of money to be spent over a certain time period. And I think they deserve to fully understand how we are going to spend their money. It also in the FIR, it says it's, the $53 million expenditures, but only 29 million revenue. That's a huge difference. Where are we going to get the remainder of that $24 million? And I think some of the potential revenues, as mentioned last night, are not guaranteed. And you look at things like the potential of federal grants that were mentioned last night. Well, with our current audit status, the federal government is going to tell you, go apply somewhere else until you get your audit, until you get your books in order. And so I think that's very concerning to me, is the major difference. It's not $1 million, it's tens of millions of dollars. And the foundation of the guarantee of the $20 million is very shaky at best. And so I think we before I'm able to support this, we need to have the fiscal component of this a little more refined, more details. Because, as the saying goes, the devil's in the details. And we can't be promising the community an aspirational plan without a detailed bill for them to understand what they're going to be paying.
Director Ladd, did you want to respond?
Please, thank you, Madam Chair. Councilor Garcia, last night, we kind of ended the conversation talking about maybe we had considered the FIR in too broad of a vision, and that we really needed to look at what are the actual costs of implementing